Anderson. Sally serves as Congressman Negus's Deputy Chief of Staff and District Director. She oversees Congressman Negus's Colorado team, which focuses, as y'all probably know, on constituent services and outreach across the 2nd Congressional District. Sally's been his district director since he was elected in 2018. And I'm gonna do an extra shout out here because she's a proud CU Boulder alum. So thank you, Sally, for joining us. My hope is we can have some presentation and we'll have a little bit of time for conversation. If folks have questions and want to put them in the chat so you don't forget your question, feel free to use the chat that way because we'll also be using that for notes. Sally, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, Commissioner Locamine, for the introduction. It's good to see you all. And I am also a newbie to Microsoft Teams, so I'm going to apologize in advance for my any technical difficulties. But yeah, we were reached out just to kind of give an update on the Congressman's priorities, kind of what we're seeing from the administration so far. Happy to answer a couple of questions, and if I don't know the answer, I'm happy to connect you with whoever's best on our policy team or district team. So as folks know, we have offices in Boulder and in Fort Collins, and hopefully at some point in the future, post-COVID, we can all get together in our Boulder office and see each other as humans in person. So I am going to, okay, I think I can share my screen. So
yes, it's shared.
Let me know. Can you see this slide?
Contact information we can see.
Okay, great.
There we go, the update.
Yes, okay,
Thanks.
Perfect. Cool, so I'm just gonna run through really quickly. So for Congressman Negus, for those who don't know, he was recently elected this Congress as co-chair of the House Democratic Policy and Communications Committee, which is extra exciting for our district and for Colorado and for you all, because that means he's helping to craft both the policy and the communications for the House Democratic Caucus. So gives him a seat at the table and to make sure that our priorities are heard. He's going to continue to be on Judiciary, Natural Resources, and the Select Committee on the Climate Crisis Committees. I know folks have been interested in the Select Committee on the Climate Crisis. They had the field hearing, which many of you were able to attend. I guess it's now almost a year and a half ago. And so for those who've been following along, for them, they released their report last summer, which was the main goal of the committee for the 116th Congress. And so this next Congress, the main goal is going to be attaching legislative items to each of the goals they set out in that report to give the report some teeth and to start acting on that. Of course, for him and for most of the caucus, COVID relief is top of mind. We've been really grateful to work with you all and with your cities, towns, counties on the state and local government funding piece. That's a huge thing for Congressman Negus, because we know that a lot of the smaller counties and towns were left out of those initial funding pieces from the previous stimulus packages. So that is very much top of mind, as is SNAP, expanding SNAP, rental assistance, and individual assistance. And then, as folks know, not only did we experience the COVID disaster and pandemic that we're still in, but the wildfire season was truly devastating. So another big section for our office is wildfire recovery. So he is planning to introduce a bill called the Wildfire Recovery Act, which at the moment for the FMAG grants, so the Fire Mitigation Assistance Grants that many of the areas in Colorado were able to benefit from in wildfire recovery this year, it requires a 25% match from state and from local governments. So this bill would basically expand the cap for FEMA so they could go beyond that 75% that the federal government's willing to reimburse. So it kind of gives our local governments a little bit more flexibility in their own budgets, which we know is really important. Increased funding for the Emergency Watershed Protection Program. We've heard from a lot of folks after the wildfires, and just as we're looking towards longer wildfire seasons, and just we know they're going to continue to be pretty intense, making sure that we're also taking a look at the water mitigation and that we have clean, accessible water for all of our areas. He also launched the Wildfire Caucus with Rep. Curtis out of Utah that's going to focus on wildfire mitigation, management, public health and safety. And so that's a bipartisan caucus. In order to join, it has to be one Democrat and one Republican, so it's always balanced. And then the 21st Century Conservation Corps. He introduced this last Congress. We're planning to introduce it again to make major investments in wildfire resiliency and mitigation efforts, and to make major investments in conservation and forest restoration. And then the other bucket, public lands and the environment, of course, is a big priority for the congressman. He just introduced, along with Senator Bennett yesterday, the CORE Act, the Colorado Outdoor Recreation Economy Act, which has been a bill that's been 10 years in the making, as far as touching base with stakeholders and getting support from folks across the state to protect over 400,000 acres of public lands. The congressman passed this twice through the House, and so now we're looking at, with a Democratic majority in the Senate as well as the administration, looks like it's favorable to pass. So that would be incredibly exciting for all involved. And then lastly, which I also know is big for you all, infrastructure. We've heard from the Biden administration, and it's also big for the congressman, that a comprehensive infrastructure package will be coming our way. We don't know exactly what that would look like, but again, for all of these, really welcome your thoughts, opinions, ideas, what would help your areas for infrastructure or for any of these other issues that I've mentioned. So, or if I didn't mention them, welcome to those ideas as well. So I wanted to kind of go over, I'm sure folks have seen the American Rescue Plan, which is came out of the White House and the Biden administration, as far as the comprehensive new COVID plan that they've put together. Basically, there's kind of like two paths this could go, as far as just more like procedural, how it will get across the finish line. I know the president is working to try and get bipartisan support for this. The main focus and a lot of the money allocation would be to safely reopen schools. So making sure that money's going for schools to be able to put in, those glass protectors and to get testing and vaccinations to teachers and all the things we need to safely reopen, as well as the immediate relief to folks, the $1,400 per person, and just helping the economy and small businesses. So right now, as I mentioned, the president is working to make this a bipartisan effort to move through as a comprehensive bill. The House just passed actually this evening kind of a procedural vote where they are doing a budget reconciliation. The budget reconciliation would essentially take the American Rescue Plan as a basis for the dollar allocations. I'll skip to here. So it would be $1.9 trillion total. And again, all of these numbers are just what have been in the plan so far. We're not, they're not set in stone, just kind of depends if it goes through either the legislative path that I mentioned, or if it goes through budget reconciliation, which would mean this plan would be kind of broken out into the different committees, and depending on what the committees decide, these numbers could change. So I just want to flag that because I don't want to promise anything, but this is just what we've heard from the Biden administration. So $145 billion to K-12, $160 billion to COVID funding, so vaccines and national vaccination plan, testing, and then the piece that I know you all are very interested in, the $350 billion in state and local government. Again, that's just what's been in the plan. We're not totally sure if that'll be the case or not, rental assistance, and then the stimulus checks and the $400 a week pandemic unemployment assistance through September. So that's the overview of that. I also want to just kind of flag some of the events that our office is hosting. The Congressman is hosting a bilingual immigration town hall. As y'all have seen, there's been a number of executive orders coming out of the Biden administration, and so we have some really fabulous special guests that are going to walk us through each of those and answer any questions. And then a wildfire summit. So as we just kind of look back on the last season, we thought it was important to have both a listening session and kind of a different panel discussions on looking forward. What have we learned from this wildfire season? What can we do legislatively? How can we work together as a state at every level of government to make sure that we're prepared for the next one? So there's a public panel from 12 to 1, and then I invite you all, there's an afternoon of panels that are not released to the public, but more for experts on different subjects of wildfire management to kind of dive in, and for all of us at different levels of government to engage in the robust and just kind of candid conversation without press or anything like that. So that is the intent, and there's more info at negoose2021.com. I'm happy to elaborate and to send more details, especially on the Wildfire Summit, because there's a lot of great stuff in there. And then lastly, I'll just keep it short and then open for questions. Feel free, this is my email. You all know Jill Grano as well. She's the Director of Community Affairs. She's a fabulous resource for our office as well if you have questions. And she's also a great resource. I know we have a lot of housing folks on the line, so she's kind of our go-to housing person in the office. And then Bo Morris is our legislative director in DC. And so wanted to make sure everybody had all of our information. So feel free to reach out anytime. And that's all I got. Now I don't know how to unshare my screen. So that will be the next.
Same button, Sally.
Okay, cool.
Thank you, Sally. Appreciate you taking the time and joining us and being here, and we won't keep your words as commitments. I heard that, as much as we'd like to.
Promise a lot of money and then get in trouble for promising a lot of money.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you. I was just going to say, for folks who want to ask questions, if you want to put them in the chat, I'll kind of keep my eye on the chat to help Sally, and or as folks are raising their hands, we'll try and call on you as well. And I believe it was Polly first and then Kyle. Polly, if you want to, there you go.
Yes, I had a hard time unmuting myself. Thank you, Sally. This was really interesting. I'm a huge fan of Representative Neguse, and I wanted to have you thank him for the town of Longmont and for all of the people on the Northwest Rail for his strong stance on the RTD thing. It's completely outrageous. And I really we are all very appreciative of the strong stance that Governor Polis and Representative Neguse took about that. I know this may not be really up his alley, but in terms of housing, as you probably know, 50% of the people in Boulder County are housing burdened, and 30% of them are severely housing burdened. And so what I would like to put forward is that you convey to him it would be very good to overturn the Faircloth Act so that we can actually build public housing again, and also fully fund HUD and restore it to something that actually functions as a public housing authority. Thank you very much for this presentation.
Yeah, thank you. I'll definitely bring that back to him and flag it for our policy team too. So appreciate that.
Thank you.
And I don't know how to lower your hand, Polly. Maybe you can try and do that. Kyle, bless you, and you're next, and then Holly.
Thank you, Christopher. I appreciate it. Sally, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it. I wanted to ask you quickly about, a lot of people throughout Boulder County are maybe self-employed, and they often purchase their own health insurance, or have an offer of affordable coverage through their employer. Exciting things about the Biden rescue plan is this expansion and augmentation of the tax credits available under the ACA, moving people's contribution down from 9.5% or almost 10% to 8.5% of their income, and lower if you're less than that, if you're less than 400% of poverty potentially, but extending it beyond 400%, well up into, having no cap essentially. First of all, I think that's a really exciting thing for a lot of people. It provides that kind of assurance, provides the flexibility for people to change jobs without worrying about their health insurance or retire early. But it's also, but I guess more importantly, what's the news on that particular provision, I guess? Is there anything, you had some bullet points in there, and what's the prognosis on that particular prong of the Biden rescue plan?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll have to double check with our folks. My understanding is we won't truly know until if it goes through budget reconciliation, once it goes through those committees in the House, we'll have a better sense of kind of what they mark up, what they edit, and everything like that, which should happen in the next week and a half. So happy to keep you posted.
Thank you. Yeah.
We'll go to Holly and then Devin, and then I'll share out Ken's question in the chat.
Holly, I think you're on mute.
There. Good?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Sally, and thank Representative Neguse. We're so pleased that he's our representative and really appreciate all of his work. I'd like to talk a little bit about the Wildfire Caucus and the Wildfire Summit, which I am so excited to see. As you may know, here in Lyons, we were in the path of several fires this fall, and I personally had to evacuate twice. It's a terrifying thing. And so the town of Lyons, the infrastructure is not prepared to fight a wildfire. And that's become a big issue for us. So I'm wondering if there will be funding available. I'm sure you don't know now, but I guess I'd like to put in the hat that it would be terrific if there were resiliency funding available to local governments. And you can be sure we'll be at that summit. So thank you so much.
Perfect. That would be great. And I'll send more detailed information probably through Mark and George so they can send it out to you all. That's a great point. And I don't know about the resiliency funding, but I'll definitely flag it for our team. And I know Lyons was also put in a pretty particular situation where you were having to be the shelter and kind of the place for everybody. And I know that's such a burden to put on Lyons in the midst of everything while you're also evacuating. So I know there was a lot going on for you all.
Thanks, Holly. Devin, you're up.
Thank you. Thanks for being here, Sally, and thank you to Representative Neguse for his amazing work there in DC. It doesn't go unnoticed by many Broomfield residents. I'll definitely second the support for the Northwest Rail. That was huge. It's something that we just have to continue to discuss and find a solution for. And just to share with all of you, the amazing news out of Broomfield in connection with Representative Neguse was that he just introduced the Alleys Act, which is inspired by a local girl here in Broomfield that will require insurance companies to cover hearing devices. So that's a cool thing, and that just happened, and it was inspired by a local girl here in Broomfield. So pretty cool. Two questions. So one of them was you were talking about infrastructure. and that it will be a comprehensive infrastructure package. For me, this was something, with the former administration, I spent the last 3 years in discussions with them, talking about infrastructure and talking with them about what this package would look like. 3 years later, nothing came of it. So I'm hesitant to kind of go all in again, because I really can't spend that much time talking about a package that never comes. But also one of the things that was frustrating with that former administration is we could never really define what infrastructure meant to them, because it can mean roads, bridges, highways, et cetera, but it also can mean natural gas pipelines. It can mean electric grid. So there's a whole lot that can be a part of that infrastructure. So it'd be good to find out what kind of infrastructure that's going to be tailored toward. And then the second question is on that, I guess it's the American Rescue Plan, the 1.9 trillion, if transit agencies are going to be funded in there as well. That's something for RTD. It's something for our local transit agencies that they're really struggling. So along with the state and local assistance, those transit agencies really need some funds just to continue to operate, because they've been hit really hard. So thanks. That's all I have. And you can answer those now or answer them later.
Thanks, Devin. It's good to see you. In the Alleys Act, Senator Warren is leading it in the Senate. There's a really amazing video of all of them talking together with Allie and her mom. It's pretty sweet. I can, definitely follow up on infrastructure. The FAST Act also expires this year too, so I know it's gonna have to include definition of surface transportation. We know that much, but I can follow up on the rest. And then as far as the plan with transit agencies, I'm not sure, but I do know that the American Rescue Plan is the first of 2, is what they have said. So if it's not included in this, we can see what we can do for the next one.
Great, thank you. And Devin, if you want to put something in the chat regarding the Alleys Act, just for folks to use as a reference, that would be great. That's why we're all here. That's why we're meeting to collaborate. So I'm going to go through a couple of the questions in the chat for folks who are later listening to the recording as well. So Ken Lish from Superior said, thank you very much, Sally. We greatly appreciate you joining us tonight. It's a little outside the scope of this meeting, but I'd love to have further conversations offline about Rep. Negus's position on the Endless Frontier Act that came out of the Senate. Who should I email, call to discuss further? So if you want to say out who the contact is or the best contact method, that'd be great.
Great. Yeah, you can send me an email and I'll put it in the chat again as well.
Thank you very much.
For folks on the recording, Sally, if you don't mind.
Sure. It's sally.anderson@mail.house.gov.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
There's another question, and I don't see the user's name, just commenting that Netherlands suffers from similar infrastructural deficiency for fighting wildfire. And I believe that comment came up when our folks from Lions were talking. Any other questions for Sally while we've got her time and resource to share with us?
One thing I will add, and I think most folks know this, but just in case you don't, as I mentioned, the Colorado offices, we really focus on constituent services and outreach, but a big piece of that is just if you all have anybody coming to you who have issues getting Social Security, they have issues getting their economic impact payment. We've had a lot of folks having issues with that through the IRS, or just their IRS tax refunds are held up. Anything through a federal agency or even unemployment, we're happy to help assist people to make sure that they at least get answers and kind of break down the red tape that a lot of folks face with these. So please feel free to send them our way too for that.
Great, thank you for that. Any other questions that folks have? Between the resources and the events coming up, it looks like maybe folks are have their immediate questions answered. So thanks for sharing your contact information. And Sally, of course, you're welcome to stay and hang out. And if you can't, we'll understand. And we appreciate you taking some time to join us.
Yeah, thank you all. I'll stay on for a little bit because I'd love to hear kind of how you all are collaborating. And again, please feel free to reach out if you have any ideas on policy. This is kind of the moment to get all the ideas out there and for us to start working on them. So appreciate that.
Great. All right. Well, we'll move forward then. So I wanted to give an opportunity if there's anybody that jumped on in the midst of our presentation that didn't get a chance to introduce themselves. We were just sharing our name and our position in the city or town that we are representing.
Marta, this is Sarah. I realize that I did have a question or perhaps a request for Sally and Representative Neguse.
Yeah,
Sally,
and Sally's still on, yeah.
Okay, sorry about that.
No.
Just to say that with the COVID relief funds that the communities got, it was a bit difficult to spend the money, very difficult to spend the money in the short period of time that was originally allowed for it, and then it was ultimately extended through the end of this year. And with the rental assistance dollars, which just came down from the Treasury, it's awesome and wonderful, and we're really glad to have it. And we know that the need will expand likely, but beyond December 2021. And it always takes a while, even if we have a program in place. For example, we're still waiting for the Treasury FAQs to understand what the rules are. December is approaching quickly. So if there is a potential possibility to expand the deadline beyond, well, September is when they start clawing money back. December is the final deadline. It would be wonderful to be able to distribute the money mindfully and intentionally instead of just rushing to get it out the door. So just to vocalize that request.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely. And I know George Twigg has been a big advocate for making sure that funding deadlines are extended too. So thank you.
Great, thank you. That's an important item as well. So we are going to, here's kind of the plan for the rest of the evening. We do have some discussion in regards to, we do have an action item, I should say, that we are, Leslie Irwin's going to present and talk with us for about 10 to 15 minutes together. And then we will work on our discussion of really how we're going to come up with the upcoming consortium meeting topics. And so I want to discuss some ideas there. And the goal is to walk away this evening with the rest of our year topic planned and everybody's homework and ways that we're going to be able to collaborate this year. So I'm going to turn it over to Leslie. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, Marta. So I'm Leslie Irwin. I'm a senior policy analyst in the Boulder County Commissioner's Office, and I also do disaster recovery work since the flood. I've managed federal funds, compliance and eligibility at the county level, and and as Sarah teed up, the county was a direct recipient from Treasury of Treasury Emergency Rental Assistance dollars that was in the Omnibus bill, the Consolidated Appropriations Act at the end of December. So we have $9.8 million that we have to spend. By the end of the year, they will start clawing back if our spend rate isn't on track in September. So there is assistance in the community and the need is great. All providers have backlogs. The state has a tremendous backlog, hundreds of applications every day. The state is expending $6 million a week in housing assistance. And I just wanted to give you that context as I tee up a request that we come to you with this evening. So a team of policy and housing staff have been meeting, and housing folks have been collaborating around this funding and needs for a while. But policy folks joined in around some policy needs that are barriers and increase housing instability in Boulder County. Namely, our request is a letter, and would it be helpful if I shared my screen? Mark did send a document out, but I'd be happy to share my screen.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, let me grab the correct document. Give me just 1 second. Here it is. Do you see advocacy requests?
request. Yep, thank you.
Okay, great. So I'm up here at the top part, why I'm here. So our request for you concretely at the front end is for consortium members to take back to your councils a request to sign on to a letter, all of our jurisdictions, to the governor, asking him to extend executive orders or make executive orders or take other actions around protections, housing stability protections for renters in particular, and also, frankly, financial protections for landlords as well. If we could keep people housed, it really helps everybody.
Leslie, can you blow that up on your screen just a teensy bit? That might be helpful for folks.
I sure can.
Thank you.
Let me make this a little wider here. Is that better? Is that better?
My eyes say thank you. I don't know about everyone else.
I'm seeing it on my second screen, so I can't tell how big it is, so thank you. So we are asking, and I'll go into the content, the meat of the actual request here in a second, but we did have a deadline for trying to get council approval by February 26th. We thought this would be feasible with needing to take it to council and deadlines, with the aim of having a letter out for sure by March 1st. So the asks are these that we would include in the letter, and basically the content in this memo and the attachment would be transformed into a letter. So you're basically looking at the content of the letter somewhat. So the first ask is to extend or make permanent the executive order requiring landlords to give tenants a 30-day demand for compliance notice rather than the current statutory 10-day demand. And what that means is there was that extension to 30 days and that lapsed at the end of December. And so when tenants are late on fees, they'll get this demand letter. There's a lot of confusion and they'll think it's an eviction letter and it causes chaos in their lives. They might vacate their housing to an unstable housing situation. They might come to us for help, but 10 days is not enough to process them through and give them assistance with most programs, or I'd say all programs, with all the backlogs that exist that I mentioned. And nor is it enough time to help them negotiate with their landlords. All of our communities are trying to move to mediation first before getting into eviction proceedings, although there is a moratorium. But it doesn't give us enough time. That 30-day is really critical for that housing stability piece. And it's a win-win because then we could keep them housed, we could get the assistance, the dollars that we have at our access through Treasury, get assistance to them and keep them housed. This piece would also include a request about requiring that information to be provided to renters, because we feel like such panic is caused when they receive this 10-day notice letter. They don't know about assistance that's out there. They think it might be an eviction notice. So we would like explicit information provided to the renter as well. Another piece is extending the moratorium on fees and penalties for late rent payments. There is a current suspension of late fees and interest until March 2, but we would like to see that extended. And with the rental assistance that's out there, you know, we think that's a reasonable request. We aren't asking for landlords to be in a hardship. We would like to get them paid. And then, or that they would be capped at a reasonable percentage, 2% to 5%, for example, of monthly rents. And then the third piece of the request would be to reinstate the eviction moratorium in Colorado, and that would reaffirm alignment with the CDC. Yes, the CDC did extend halt residential evictions to March 31st, but we just think it makes clear to have that consistent in the state. And I will also just say that there is a bar, there are some requirements to meet, there are thresholds to meet that CDC parameters for halting evictions, and we think it would have more teeth to have at the state level as well. And so again, here is the request. You could send it to me or via Mark. We work together, so you could communicate your government's willingness to sign on to the letter. And again, there's that February 26th deadline to get approval back to us so that we could get a letter submitted to the governor by March 1st. And then I won't go through this piece, but this attachment A here is a document from City of Boulder, City of Longmont, and Boulder County staff about really the impacts of these different policies, and then suggestions. So for example, in the 10-day moratorium or 10-day versus 30-day notice, you know, it does talk about the 30-day being a much more workable time frame to come up with a plan, whereas speedy enforcement, the extended time frame allows for that mediation that I mentioned. So if you're wanting any more information on any of these specific issues, you could find information in this document. Rental assistance for now is somewhat solved in Boulder County with that Treasury money, which we really appreciate, and it's going to be great help to our residents. But the information dissemination is another issue mentioned above. So I will stop there. If there are questions, and also Sarah Buss from Boulder County and Kristen Heiser from City of Boulder, for our housing experts, and Carl Castillo has participated in the conversations as well from City of Boulder. So if there are any questions, or if Sarah or Kristen, you have anything to add.
Thanks, Leslie. You covered it well. Carl just said in the comments that you might not necessarily need to take it back to your council, but if you do, now would be the time, basically.
And I do think Boulder City Council might have taken it up yesterday evening and given a nod for this advocacy effort, I do believe. And my commissioners will take it up next Monday, I believe, and I would anticipate they'll be supportive, but we won't know that till Monday.
Thanks, Leslie, and thanks for that information. Adam, I see your hand up.
Thanks, Marta. Yeah, I just wanted to confirm what Leslie said. We took this up last night and we actually had full 9 council members behind this. So
fantastic. Thank you. So are there questions, and are folks generally willing to take this request back? And what do you need from us? Would this document suffice, or is there something different that you need from us to make that request?
Polly, was that a yes, or that was a hands up, or both?
Yeah, because I didn't read this in time, I didn't get it into last night's, but I'll take it to the city, and I'm sure we'll have everyone, or almost everyone, sign on to it. So we'll bring it back by the 26th.
Thanks, Polly.
Thank you very much. I know our staff worked on it too. Karen Roney talked to me today, and so
terrific.
I'll leave it up to her to explain more because she does a better job. So
that's great.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Kyle, thanks for raising your hand.
Thanks. Just a quick question. The signatories on this particular letter are this like cities as an entity, or are you looking for individual council member signatures? Who should be signing? We can take it back to our council. I plan to do that, but just want to make sure we're giving you the right signatories. The city itself. Okay.
Yes, that's what we're thinking. And I will clarify, Broomfield, you passed an ordinance around the 10-day and 30-day, I think. Is that correct? So is that accurate?
Yeah, I believe so. Let me check on the specifics of that, but I believe so.
Yeah, so you kind of have it covered. Feel free to sign on though.
Well, I'll just add, I'm Kristen Heiser with the City of Boulder, and we are in a consortium with Broomfield. We're part of the home consortium, so and that would make perfect sense for Broomfield to join forces with Boulder County to sign on to this. So happy to extend in that direction if that's the will of the group.
Good. And then Carl had mentioned in the chat, yes, cities as an entity as a response to one of those questions. Kristen, your note says fee caps.
I believe that's what Broomfield, they were great and were a lead on putting caps in place on late fees. So that was something we've been looking to as an example of if there's not action taken at the state level, we might be revisiting with you about action we might take at the local level. And that is one example we would be looking to, because Broomfield was ahead of the curve and got that in place at the end of last year. Just really appreciative of the work that they did that we could easily steal from. So appreciate that, Broomfield.
Okay. Kyle, your hand's up.
Oh. I think it's just left up. Sorry about that.
Oh, no, that's okay. I did have one question in regards to the requirement to have bilingual information. And so if all cities and or municipalities put that in there, who would be providing that, the professional translation of such said document? And what's the thought or plan there?
Kristen, do you want to take that one?
Actually, I have an idea.
Oh, Sarah, thank you.
So the notice for demand for compliance is usually a state, like there's a state approved form. So it might be that's through the courts. So it might be that we would have to ask the courts to upload. I'm sure they have one in Spanish, but other languages, we might have to work with the courts on that. So that might be more complicated because that could be potentially outside, well, not outside the governor's jurisdiction, but an added step for landlords to post it in another language. I would assume they have one in Spanish, but maybe it would be to make all reasonable efforts to post a demand in the first language of the tenant. That's something we'd have to explore, I think, a little further, Marta, to fully understand. But I do think it's the court. The courts would be involved in some way for a notice. Kristen, maybe you have more too.
Well, I would just add that one of the nice things that we have working for us is there's been so much collaboration. I mean, pre-COVID, but really during COVID. So a lot of our messaging is already cohesive across the region. And so it would be, as we're looking at this, it's not just the legal notice, it's also pointing people in the right direction of accessing housing supports through the housing helpline that was stood up by Boulder County Housing and Human Services, which serves all the county, as well as our community mediation programs that serve the county. So there's a lot of shared information we've already have in English and Spanish. And last night, our city council, and I'll defer to Councilmember Svetlik about this, but there was a request to be as conscientious as possible about providing documentation and languages, the first language of the tenant that's receiving this. So there was some discussion about the complexity of that as you veer outside of just English and Spanish and start looking at, what was it that Aaron mentioned, 6,000 languages in the world or something, and maybe we can't serve every language, but going back to, I love the concept that Sarah just shared of maybe just putting out our best effort to do that, or to connect people with interpreters online. That might be a route to follow.
And one more thing to add, we are working very closely with our courts through the mediation group to communicate and to ensure mediation is available, and to even refer for rental assistance where we have mediation and our housing stabilization program on call during eviction court, so that we can approve rent right on the spot for people who are facing eviction. So approve rental assistance, I should say. So we have a great collaboration with our local courts where we can work with them locally on the language and translation issues.
Great, thank you. Were there any other questions for Leslie? And Kristen, I see your hand, and I don't know if you just put it up or if it was from previous. Thank you. Any other questions for Leslie? And otherwise, Leslie, can you just really quickly tell folks again, how do they need to give you a yes and or reply to this request, and what was the deadline?
I'm trying to think, since you have Mark's contact information. I'm wondering if that's the easiest or if I should provide you with my contact information. But whether it's me or Mark, I guess you first need to determine, does it need to go to council? If it doesn't, just let us know as soon as possible that you are willing to sign on to the letter. If it does need to go to council, take it to your next available council, and as soon as hopefully it's approved, just let us know that you'll sign on, and then we'll circulate a letter to get those signatures. We'll start circulating as soon as we start hearing back from folks. But just as soon as you hear back, but then that hard deadline is February 26th, so that we could get the letter out by March 1st.
Great. And Eric, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I was just wondering what the reasoning was behind the kind of either or here on extending the moratorium or capping late fees, and why the request isn't simply to extend a moratorium on late fees.
I will defer to Kristen or Sarah on that.
So there's we've heard from landlords as well that having some late fees as a possibility encourages people to pay their rent. If they don't have late fees, then they're completely disincentivized. I can never say that word. They're not encouraged to pay their rent on time, and then that can be a struggle for landlords in their books. So that's why we have that as an option. We have seen late fees when COVID first started and before the moratorium went into place of up to $100, $120 a day. So that's just obviously ridiculous. And so we suggested a cap to kind of recognize where landlords might, recognize the landlord's needs too, because otherwise people could just simply not pay and there would be no consequence for them if they're able to pay and they don't pay.
I would just offer, so what you see in front of you is something that we've been, this is something we have put forward multiple times over the last 9 months in different contexts. So it's really the same request over and over again, just sometimes we have to request for it to be reinstated or to be extended. But in that process, we have been very intentional about working with trying to represent tenants' rights, as well as also holding up our landlords, because without their working with our community and providing affordable housing options, we're in that much more of a crisis. So we've worked very hard with our housing providers to strike a balance between providing those tenant protections while also making sure that their properties are financially stable and sustainable through this crisis as well.
Yeah, and it would sure be awesome, Sally, if we could, get more mortgage lenders and banking institutions to be more flexible and everything with mortgage payments, because so many of our landlords are suffering. It's a small business, or they're not able to make their mortgage, and it's a trickle up effect, if you will, and really the banks are sitting pretty. So I think that's a real unspoken need. And just a personal note, I find myself a landlord here in Seattle, helping out with my family, and the landlords are really bound by some of these eviction rules and what have you. So there is some room of improvement in policies for helping out the landlord as well. But this seems to be coupled with the rental assistance and us working actively with landlords and outreaching to landlords to ensure that they get paid. We feel like the eviction moratorium and the late fee moratorium and the 30-day demand will still meet the landlord's financial needs.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Great. All right. Well, Leslie, I appreciate that. And if folks have other follow-up questions that they want to put in the chat to reach out, but otherwise I heard either send a message to Mark that everyone has his email from the send out of the invite, and or to Leslie. So we're gonna,
so much.
Yeah, thank you. We are going to move forward, and I am not seeing the chat now. For some reason, it's not there for me. So as we all go through these little challenges, so here's here's what we're going to do for the next. We have an hour, and so what I wanted to do. One, and I don't know if this is a normal practice or not, but I would love to give everybody a 2 to 3 minute break with the caveat that you must return, because we are going to talk about what's happening in 2021. I really see this group as a significant opportunity to do some work together, to collaborate, not just to bring in a speaker and have them present to us as much as what do we need to be working on together. Over the last couple of years, as I was getting ready for this position, I was sitting in all of your different towns and areas, and a lot of the conversations were very similar. And so this is a really exciting opportunity for me to help lead this group with staff, because I truly believe that we could be doing some action planning and work together to get better and do better for our constituents, for our residents around the county. So what we are going to do, everybody had from Mark's email earlier today, just a note of here's what we would like you to bring in. So I'm going to give you all a couple minutes to do that and put it in the chat. So what the question is that we are asking is, outside of COVID, we don't want to be dismissive of COVID-19. And we also know that it's a conversation for all of us, I'm sure, every day. And so we know that that's a high priority all over the country and the world. But we're going to step aside from that and just say, outside of COVID, what are the top 2 issues that your town or your city is working on? And that might be, what are the issues that are most important to your community right now? So that's the question that you've got. And Mark, if you can cut and paste that into the chat, that might be helpful for folks. And then we'll give everybody, until like 7:31 to answer that. And so type it in there, what your issues are, and get up and take a quick break, fill up your beverage glass or whatever that might be, and stretch out for a minute. Make sure you respond, and then we're going to come back and let's get some work done. And Mark, if you need me to help with cut and paste from the email, I'm happy to do that too. Mark, can you unmute for just a quick second? I'll check in on you.
Yep, I'll sit there with the chat.
Oh, is it in there? So
Yeah. Did you want just the first question?
Yeah, just the first question, and I just can't see it for some reason. I've done something to my chat. Gosh. And this isn't my area of expertise. Mm-hmm. So what I might have to have you do is just help me do the reading out. Okay, I appreciate you. I'm going to just stretch for a quick second. And everyone has a minute. So if you've turned off your deal and you're running around your house jogging, a minute and we'll all get back together. And if anybody's a Teams guru, I can see the title says meeting chat, but everything is darkened out. If that means anything to anybody with experience, feel free to chime in, and because I can see people typing, but it just looks like ... and I can't see the.
That's so strange. I haven't heard of that before, but I should note, if anyone's listening, that moving forward, we're going to be using Zoom for consortium meetings. The county finally got around to getting a Zoom account that we can use for larger meetings, and we'll start doing that with the next meeting. Yeah.
Thanks, Leslie.
Teams works fine for internal communications amongst the organization, but when you start engaging with external partners, it gets clunky really fast. At least that's my highly uneducated tech view, but.
All right. All right, everybody. Top off your dinner and we are going to get back together. So the question, and if you're still kind of contemplating and getting ready to type, that's totally fine. So the question again was, outside of COVID, what are the top 2 issues that your town or city is working on? Or what are the issues, those 2 issues that are most important to your community? And so what we'd like to do is really, with your responses, which is why it's really important for you to type in, and Mark's taking a look at those and tallying them up, in hopes that we can identify some of these same topics. My guesstimate, without being able to see anything even now, is that we're going to have some crossover items. And so what better opportunity to get together and do some work on those items. And I can see folks there's a couple of people still typing, so. We'll let them finish. And then Mark, what I'll have you do is just read out those topics so we can talk about it a little bit before we go to the second question.
Sounds good.
And then our hope is to have some time still at the end of the meeting to do what it sounds like this group does typically at the end of the meeting, is to just share out what you're working on right now, and certainly any virtual invites that you need to share to other folks to make sure that we help you all get the word out on your projects. All right, Mark, are you ready to read?
Yep. All right, good. We're getting some good input. So I'll just start at the top, so to speak.
Thank you.
Okay. Lions noted wildfire resiliency and economic vitality. Adam from Boulder posted, racial equity and climate initiatives are the top two most easily collaborative projects. We have an extremely collaborative staff that is willing to lend guidance to any members of the consortium who are looking to expand their policy here. Okay.
Great.
Louisville and Kyle, economic vitality and sustainability are perhaps the most important issues for Louisville residents. We also hope to make progress on affordable housing and equity, diversity, and inclusion. Okay. Tara from Jamestown, 1, foreseeing potential growth issues, and 2, municipal sustainability for our tiny town government. That's a big one. Devin and Broomfield, economic vitality and sustainability.
Great.
And Polly posted for Longmont. Longmont is most concerned with housing and economic recovery. The areas we are also concerned about are transportation and sustainability / climate change, all viewed through an equity lens. Housing and transportation can be particularly fruitful on a county-wide basis. Yep. Okay, Ken, Trustee Lish from Superior, similar to Kyle, we're focused on economic development and sustainability initiatives. Also near the top is attainable housing and airport noise. In fact, one of the last meetings we were able to host in one of the consortium communities was in Superior, and addressed the issue of airport noise at that meeting. And then Eric David Coombs-Esmail from Netherlands. Hard for me to summarize Netherlands challenges, but from my perspective, we are challenged by issues that impact health, safety, and quality of life, in two broad categories. One, ongoing infrastructural problems that compromise health, safety, and quality of life, including housing and transportation, in a fundamentally unequal way. And two, lack of access to critical human services, in part due to the rural nature of Nederland, though we are not designated as such. Of course, others in that will have different answers. Yes.
It's a good caveat.
Yep.
Said all of us.
And then few folks decided to take another bite at the apple, but that's good. Devin chimed in again along with economic vitality, land use, thriving communities, economy working for all. And Tara added wildfire preparedness as well in support of the Lions suggestion. And Kyle seconded airport noise. That's obviously an issue for Louisville as well.
Great. I would like to ask for just a little bit of explanation. There was two that I just want to clarify because some of these terms could mean different things. One of them was growth. Can you, and I apologize that I didn't get names written down too. Who said there was one comment about growth?
That might have been mine for Jamestown. Yeah, that's just taking a look at Marta, I'm Tara. I haven't met you before, but I've heard a lot of great things about you, so I'm excited to work with you. Growth is just anticipating the growth that we're seeing as sort of the urban area sprawls up the canyon and into little mountain communities, and what are the types of things that we need to start thinking about from sort of almost like we don't have any land use ordinances. We do permitting through Boulder County, but we don't use the land use component of Boulder County. And so are there ordinances that would fit into that category that we need to think about as we look at growth in our tiny community?
Thank you. And I would encourage folks to, this is part of the reason we're doing this recording, because if you're hearing another town or city representative talking about something that you all do well, don't wait for us to host that meeting to bring that topic up. That's part of the benefit of this type of a networking group. So the other one that I just wanted to ask about sustainability, and it was the same person that talked about economic viability.
I think that was me. So I kind of clarified it down a little bit later. This is Devin with Broomfield, by the way. Economic vitality. So, I think that there's multiple components in there. I mean, it used to be defined as, economic development. But I think that economic vitality is much more, ensuring that the current economy is there, continues to thrive. And so with that, especially for Broomfield, as we get closer and closer to build out, we have to take consideration of land use and what that land use looks like. We have to take consideration of ensuring that our community thrives, and that's all aspects of our community. So seniors down to families and kids, and there is services for all of them. And then an economy that works for all. We found out, or we know, that 80% of our Broomfield residents work outside of Broomfield, and 80% outside of Broomfield come into Broomfield to work. So we kind of have an economy that's not necessarily working for all at this point. So I think that economic vitality is really encompassing quite a bit there.
Yeah,
Thanks for that.
I'll chime in because I used the exact same terms.
Sure, go ahead.
So use economic vitality in that same way. We're really worried about sort of a huge part of our economic engine in Louisville is the McCaslin corridor near the highway, and it was built during a time when big box stores were the norm, and more the retail market has shifted away from that, or some of our other communities have stolen our stores. So we're worried about sort of being able to, how do we fill those particular those particular retail spaces and also make up the difference in sales tax, so that we can continue to fund services.
Okay, so this is what I heard. I heard economic in different ways. I just jotted 6 of them down from folks who shared out, and unfortunately, I can't read the chat as it's happening, so I apologize. But that from what Mark read out, so that seems like a significant interest and need from folks who at least are participating right now. Mark, from your list, was there another one that sticks out high on the numbers of responses?
There were a couple that had two mentions. So we had racial equity / equity, diversity, inclusion, perhaps building a little bit off of the December presentation that the consortium had about the county's racial equity work. And then the wildfire resiliency / preparedness had a couple of mentions. Of course, important for our mountain communities, most certainly.
Housing was another one that was repeated 3 times that I got on here.
Yep. A couple different mentions of housing. Attainable housing and affordable housing. Yeah.
So this is my thought, and we're going to move into question 2, knowing now that I think it's helpful to, okay, what are we all facing and what are we all working on right now, and knowing that there's all other priorities. And I heard folks move from 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 items and maybe more, and that's okay. So we're trying to figure out what that's the point of the voting. So here's the second question. And the reason why is exactly what I was talking about before. Like there's so much expertise, good work, ideas, policies, plans, et cetera, already in the works in different corners of the county. Why don't we share those? Why don't we expand on them? Why are we all using resources in different corners of the county when we could be coming together? And so that's kind of where Mark and I were brainstorming about how we could maybe use this group in some new ways. So the question number 2 that was in the meeting reminder earlier was what areas of the work. So if we think about those most voted on or most brought up issues, what areas of the work you're doing on these issues provide the best opportunities for cross-jurisdictional collaboration? So
I'm happy to kick us off.
Sure. Yeah.
I didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
Sorry, this is Ken Lish. I said I'd be happy to kick us off because I think one of the things that I had written down was listed by at least 2 or 3 other jurisdictions too. So sustainability initiatives. So for us here in Superior, we have had increasing our sustainable footprint, I should say, as one of our top board goals for quite some time, but we haven't made a lot of headway in it until this year. And I think we finally have both the resident and the political will to move forward with that. So one thing that has helped us is all of you jurisdictions that have put out what your goals are and how you are moving forward on those. We have one of our advisory committees is an advisory committee on environmental sustainability, and just in our last meeting, they had provided us a comparative document that they actually went out and identified and found all of your policies and helped us build what we're going towards. So we appreciate that. You've written a playbook for us to act on. The unique thing that I will say we have done and that we are moving on, I'm sure many of you are familiar with Excel's Partner in Energy program. We are too. We are part of that, but we have taken the additional step of going to Excel and seeing what other further partnerships we can develop. And we just met with their president and some of the other high-level people in the company just yesterday, actually, to walk through what might be available and doing some brainstorming. And that's going to be a relationship that continues to progress and define itself, but we are trying to go that next step to see where we can have kind of mutually beneficial programs that can push us ahead in our initiatives.
Good. Was there anybody else that wanted to respond to question number 2? Holly?
Okay.
There you go.
In terms of sustainability, I don't think of that as just a kind of making everything nice. I think of it as in terms of, in order for a community to actually be sustainable, to be able to offer the next generation the same things that we had, and hopefully even better, it needs to be available to everybody. So everybody needs to do better. And so it ties in with not just climate change, but also economic sustainability. And that means everybody has to have the opportunities for a job, opportunities to have public transportation so they can get to a job without owning a car. We can't possibly have enough electric cars or build enough roads to provide for the future. We have to have public transportation. And that's something we can do and support as a county, so that we all have the same have opportunities for our constituents to get jobs where they want to work. And yeah, so I do think that climate change and sustainability and transportation and racial equity and every kind of equity, which is class equity, all goes together. And that's something I think we all can collaborate with. I think that the issues that people in the mountain towns and in the smaller towns have are very different. When you're talking about access to services, they really don't have the same access at all. And that's an issue of equity too. And so we could figure out a way that people in the mountains could have better access to medical care. You know, it's very limited. So we need to be working together. I mean, I really applaud what you're saying, Marta. That is what this is supposed to be. All of us working together to make sure that nobody gets the short end of the stick just because you live in Jamestown, which isn't very big, but it's still, you know, a great place to be.
Okay, good. Polly's going to bring some new folks with her to the next month's meeting. Thank you. So Devin, I believe was Devin, and then Eric, and then Holly.
Great. So I'll kick off with sustainability first, and then talk a little bit about economic vitality. So for sustainability, this past year we have established our greenhouse gas reduction emissions reductions plan. We also passed a zero waste plan. So those two things are going to be driving us in a big way this year. We will be looking to launch our energy performance contract as well as our zero waste planning process. We'll be looking at recycling, composting, looking at municipal trash collection, as much as heartburn as that gives our entire community, because we've gone through bad stuff with that before. So we're going to bring it back up and talk about it, and it may even end up on the ballot in November. We'll see. We have a phenomenal advisory committee for environmental sustainability. They are an impressive group. They bring a lot of knowledge, and they continue to push us. So hopefully by the end of the year, we will have a formalized zero waste plan, as well as a greenhouse gas emissions reduction plan that will be codified, and we will be moving towards those in big ways. So that's really exciting for Broomfield. And then the other one that I wanted to talk about a little bit was the economic vitality. So this is one that over the past year, there have been a lot of conversations on how do we look at economic development? How do we look at economic vitality? And so we're pulling a lot of different pieces together. We're looking at our long range financial plan. which sets out how we bring in revenue over the years based upon land use. We'll be pulling in a economic vitality matrix in which we will be looking at what is the best mix for different areas of Broomfield, and looking at how basically when we have a plot of land that is there, what is the best use for that land, and ensuring that we're kind of focused on that as opposed to just being so reactionary. So being much more proactive with this, and then really kind of identifying potential sites and locations, and really kind of almost marketing and attracting those developers with the right product to come in, and again being proactive with that. And then I think that in the end, what we really hope to do is to kind of overarching will be the finalize our business development strategic plan, which is basically how do we do this, how do we make this happen, and what is Broomfield's secret sauce and all of this. So it's going to be a great year in those two areas, and I look forward to sharing all that with you all. Thanks.
Thank you, Devin. Eric, and then Holly.
Yeah, I just wanted to I guess piggyback on what Devin said, but from a mountain perspective, is that sustainability and land use are really deeply tied together. So this idea of managing growth, or whether or not we want to promote growth, of course, is tied to whether or not we can live sustainably. Especially in a mountain town where we don't have access to a lot of those resources, where we don't have access to a lot of public transportation. And Tara, I'd be really interested to talk more with you about land use policy, and maybe how mountain towns in West County can maybe be on the same page, and maybe look at some of the code that Nederland has put together and see what's worked and what hasn't worked over the years. And we could certainly help Jamestown if that was desirable in crafting some policy there, because I know that it becomes a discussion in every single conversation that we have. Our Sustainability Advisory Board is reaching out to Excel and trying to get our lower income residents access to solar energy, and they're coming up with zero waste plans, and they're working on those sorts of things. But it all eventually comes down to land use and building codes, and how we're going to manage growth in the Front Range in general. But how a town like Nederland can kind of stand up to the rising tides of a much larger population that we simply don't have the infrastructure to support, and it's just not there, and it's not safe. Fundamentally, it's not safe. Big Springs neighborhood in Nederland has no egress for if there was a wildfire coming from the west. We could not escape. We would be trapped, and we can't find the funding in order to build one, even though we can identify places where we can do it. And so these are the sorts of things. I don't think we can have these conversations separately. I think they're so intrinsically tied together.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. And to me, a big win from this group would be getting our mountain towns together with the support of everybody else in the county to listen, to help build some solutions together, because we are all connected. And so that's my hope. So I appreciate you already putting out the invite to Tara, but certainly I can speak from my personal role. I would love to see how we can support that work as well. Thanks for sharing that, Eric. Holly?
Yeah, thank you, Marta, and I concur entirely. Lions, we're at build out essentially, and we've made some great policies and some not so great policies, and so I would be happy to talk to you both and share our successes and our challenges, and hopefully help you avoid some of the challenges that we've seen. So for us, economic vitality is, it's definitely tied to where we want to grow. We're starting the 10-year comprehensive plan process. So that's going to be a big push this year. Lions, in the past couple of years, we lost our doctor, we lost our town pharmacy, and we just lost our bus route to Boulder. So, it was supposed to be a temporary pause, and then COVID hit, and now it looks to be permanent. And we have a Z-Trip system in place where people can get vouchers for Z trips to Longmont or Boulder, but that's not sustainable, and it's depending on funding. And so we have a lot of challenges ahead of us, including how do we become more self-sustainable economically? How do we depend less on the people driving through up to Rocky Mountain National Park and more on our own community, so that we don't wind up being a bedroom community of Boulder or Longmont. So I'm really happy to be a part of this group. Polly, I really appreciate you making note of the fact that we're all interconnected here, and just really appreciate that. So thanks.
Thank you for that. Adam, it looks like you're next. And then I think Devin's turned back around and come back to the front. Oh, no. Okay. And so, and I just want to say real quick without cutting you off, we're almost to 8 o'clock. And so then just kind of be mindful of time and where we are in our agenda, because I don't want us to cut off if people have announcements and things like that too. So we have one more question we're going to work through together, and then we'll make time for announcements for everybody. All right, Adam.
I'll keep this super brief, but prior to COVID hitting, we had talked about working all together on a possible countywide minimum wage increase, considering the poverty level is $15 an hour for Boulder County, and we're still well below that. So that's another thing that I think is worth talking about. If the Biden administration doesn't manage to get that done nationwide, then we still only have a limited amount of bites at the apple legislatively for minimum wage increases in Colorado. So I think that's definitely worthy conversation to have here.
Great, thanks for the reminder and some of the background too of what's in the on kind of the agenda and in the back of folks' mind for what's been talked about. So that's helpful. So this is what, anybody else want to chime in before we move to the next section? Go ahead, Polly.
I just want to say that this consortium and the summit that we had about 5 years ago was absolutely instrumental in me being able to pass the affordable housing ordinance in Longmont, because I held people's feet to the fire and reminded them of what they had promised publicly, even though they also said they had no intention of doing that. But so when we agreed as a county at that summit that we were going to pass ordinances or try our best to increase affordable housing, we finally did get 12% in Longmont, much more than that I know in Boulder, and other municipalities have passed affordable housing, despite the fact that we have the state prohibition on rent control and the Telluride thing that threatens everybody who tries to do an affordable housing. So we really have had some big successes with this group working together. So and if we stick to our guns about affordable housing and promoting that, I know that we can do better for everybody.
Great. Holly, is your hand up again, or was it, did we just not get it down? Okay, no worries. All right, so then we're gonna go to question number 3. Whoops, I thought I brought it up here. Thank you. I can see it and then it goes away. So, but I've got it right here. So question 3, what can be done to eliminate silos and facilitate collaboration across jurisdictions? And so what I want to really, that one, I think what we'll do is we're going to leave that out there unless people have something absolutely burning on their mind around silos, or if you did your homework before the meeting and you've already got something on your mind. And here's what Mark and I were talking about before this meeting, but I want to get an agreement from folks who are still online and participating right now, is that if we can now go through that list that we built together of what folks are working on and just choose the 5 topics, knowing that there could be a major change, hopefully not, in our national dynamic or here in the county, but barring any major events, to choose the 5 big topics that we want to talk about. And then the plan would be that for the next 5 meetings of 2021, let's say that we choose economic vitality as an example. Then each municipality will go back for 3 weeks, work with your teams, decide who you want to bring on, and you'll come and just do a 5 to 7 minute share out about how you're defining that, how you're doing it. We don't want to know that you've got a plan for economic development. We want to know how you are addressing economic development in your town or your city. We want to know what your metrics are. How do you know that you're making movement? What kind of data might you have? So that we can really see how the work is being done. And you could bring your resources. Maybe it's a pamphlet, maybe it's an online, maybe it's a video that your team is using to share out, etc. And we'll all share from our own areas what's happening, what we are doing, or how we've done it. And then be able to do discussion together to really figure out, okay, how can we be collaborating? What can we learn from each other around these big topics? With the hopes that we're going to share information and maybe get some shortcuts in the work that we're doing and get it done more efficiently, and or find some opportunities instead of fighting for funding to work together. So that's kind of our plan of action, but I'd love to hear from you all if that feels good, if there's something in there that you would like to add, and or if you have a completely different idea of how you would like to plan the meetings for the rest of the year. Eric?
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like a great idea. One thing that I would love if we had opportunities maybe to kind of break out into groups that might have very, very similar interests that might not align so much with others. So, you know, obviously us up in the mountains versus folks down below could probably get together and talk about a lot of things that might not be productive for some other folks on this call. So just the opportunity to do that would be great.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And we talked about, as Mark mentioned, we're going to try and use the Zoom platform for the rest of our meetings so that we can jump into breakout rooms. The goal is that we'll have great participation. And so then we'll be able to do exactly what you're talking about, Eric, even during this time. Yeah. And I also want to just say that even though mountain communities may feel like their issues are way up in the mountains, per se, I really believe that there's some learnings for everybody. And I also feel like it's appropriate for us to figure out how we can bring resources. And one of those items is what a couple of folks brought up was the wildfires. That to me is seasonal, it's critical, and we're on a timeline. And it's a responsibility of all of us to protect our neighbors. And so I just say that because I don't want you all to feel like that's our issue up in the mountains. It's not, it's all of ours. So just think that through too when you're thinking about your ideas. Anybody else have any feedback about, does that format feel good, or do you have a different format that you want to share out? Mark, is there anything in there in the chat that I'm not seeing?
No.
Okay, perfect. Then we're gonna move forward with that format, and we'll make sure that we kind of get that jotted out, etc. And so everybody who's still with us on this call tonight, we're gonna pick our topics right now. And I believe from kind of my notes here, but I really want you all to participate because we're all gonna be doing the work together. The piece around economics, whether it's economic vitality or economic development or economic sustainability, it was said in several different ways, plus others. Housing. There's definitely a piece around sustainability. The sustainability initiatives, I think, is how you said it, Devin, that maybe could fit in for a few different ways. Anything else that people, there was racial equity, and then resiliency was talked about a couple of times too.
I think it would be hard to do something not about wildfire.
Thanks, Tara.
When we're in a drought.
When we're in a drought, yes, and the reality of where we are in our area after the damage. Yeah. Thank you. The cat's chiming in. I don't know if you can hear her or not, but I didn't hear exactly what she said. Do we have 5 there, Mark?
We do have 5. Yes. Yeah. I could read through them.
That'd be great. And this is where everyone gets to participate. We need a yes or no because we're all going to be bringing this work to the group together.
Yeah. So the 5, economic vitality. Second, housing, and it was called out as affordable or attainable housing. Third, sustainability initiatives. Fourth, racial equity. And 5th, wildfire resiliency. And those, I attach numbers to those just to list them out, not necessarily priorities, but priority lists, but those were the 5 topics that were mentioned.
Eric, I saw you were chatting. Do you want to just tell us? Do you mind?
Yeah, the only thing that I'm missing there is access to critical services, especially equitable access. And I feel like equity maybe in general might be pretty valuable rather than maybe just racial equity. I don't know. Just a thought.
Mm-hmm.
I think based on this conversation and the broad spectrum of our geographical piece, I think that that's appropriate. And knowing that this group specifically just met around racial equity 2 months ago, I feel okay with that. Kyle, input?
Yeah, I think that sounds great in terms of the equity lens. The only thing I was going to add is I'm not sure Louisville has a ton to say about wildfires, but how wildfires affect us probably are mostly due to it affecting our water supply, and runoff and things like that. So there might be that particular issue would be something we might learn more about than have much to present on. So, but it's a hugely important issue and one that's affected our whole community. So I don't want to I don't want to not do that. I just wanted to sort of mention that. So
how would this group, thanks Kyle, how would this group feel about natural disaster as kind of the topic? Because I feel like everybody could bring something and a learning to that. Does that feel okay, Tara? Is it Tara or Tara? I'm sorry.
Sorry, I was on mute. It's Tara.
Tara, okay.
Yep, thanks.
And does that feel okay to put that under the topic of natural disaster?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, how does that feel? We're at 8:09. I'm truly respecting y'all's evening as much as I can. All right, I would think, and Mark and I will chat a little bit. I feel like the wildfire piece might be more from a timely standpoint, just based on some of the potential legislation, some of the advocacy, education for our community, et cetera, before we get into the season. I feel like if we meet on that while we're in the season is not going to be helpful to anybody. So that's my initial thought, but we'll talk about that. Devin?
Yeah, I just put it in the chat, is making sure that drought is a part of that conversation. And I think that you're exactly right. It is a very timely conversation. And I think with the amount of wildfires that we had this year, I mean, there's a real possibility of flooding that could occur this spring. So I think that drought, floods, and wildfires is going to be at least it's top of my mind right now. And I think that I can't remember if it was Kyle that said it, concerning, we're not so much affected by wildfires in terms of, in Broomfield, but wildfires affect us, from in a lot of other ways. So I think that it's very important for our community to realize that, how the mitigation strategies that are employed up in the high country affect us here in Broomfield. So it's very important.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think there's some opportunities for us with Office of Emergency Management. And so each topic we can really be thoughtful about who else needs to be part of this conversation and dialogue. So thanks for that, Devin. Okay, I feel good. I hope you all are feeling good. I feel like we're making some progress. We have our topics, we have some ideas, we have some ways to actually bring this information, and we'll make sure that we send out the list of here's what you are bringing to the meeting. And this is like any great college project. Everybody has to perform and bring your A game. So what I want to do, I know that previously this group has gotten a chance and taken some time to just do share out of any invites, any work right now that you're doing in your community that you want to make sure folks know about. So I want to make sure that we have some time to do that. And Devin, is your hand still up, or did you just put it up again? That's okay. No apologies. Holly?
Yeah, I'll just put a plug out for Old Man Winter, which is happening February 5th and 6th in a very safe and very COVID safe way. You know, we haven't been able to have our typical Lions events and festivals and whatnot. And so there's a scholarship available for high schoolers via CEMEX or CMEX. So I'd encourage you to, let your communities know that, and maybe get on the town website if there's a teenager somewhere who would like a scholarship to run around in the snow and cold.
Great. And this would be a great opportunity. It seems like the chat's working for everybody else. So if folks want to put in, the website, or there's a contact or something like that for everybody else. And I would really suggest, this is where we're hearing about these events. Tomorrow, your homework is to share it out on your own social media, or if there's an appropriate place in your municipality to do that. That's how we share about what else is happening around our communities. Adam?
Yeah, I just want to share, we're in our next regular meeting going to hopefully adopt our first racial equity plan officially. So I realize not every community has a designated staff member who's working on that or anything even close. So, but if you're looking to further that work in your community, please, please, please use us as a resource. And Amy Kane, who's in charge of that work, is super happy to help anyone who's interested, because, we want to improve this not just in the city, but as the entire county, state, country, hopefully, eventually. That's a lot of work ahead, but please use us as a resource. We're happy to help.
Great, that's exciting. Yeah, you'll have to send us the invite of how we virtually can participate and share it out. I think that's a piece of it, right? Folks need to know what's being done in that area as well.
Yeah, I'll find the PDF for everybody and send it to Mark.
Great, thank you. Ken?
So I apologize. I cut out for a little bit right before we started this. So it sounds like we're going around the table and doing announcements of kind of high level things that might be useful to this group. But one thing that I wanted to share from the town of Superior is with our, at least a part of our allocation of CARES Act funds, and then supplemented with our regular town funds, to help stimulate our local economy during the COVID-19 pandemic, we created something called Superior Cash. And essentially the idea is that we sent out 2 $10 gift certificates, so $20 total, to every single household in Superior. And those gift certificates could only be used at participating businesses in Superior. And I think we had 30 or so businesses, which that's the majority of businesses here in our town participate. And it couldn't be the big box stores and it couldn't be at liquor stores. But it got the community involved to actually feel like they had a hand in helping our businesses. It got some direct support to our businesses. It got direct support to our residents. And then it also had a multiplier effect that when people went in to use those gift certificates, they were ultimately spending 3 or 4 times the amount on their bill than what the certificate was for. So it had a kind of a multiplier effect that we're estimating between 4 and 5 times. So it ended up being a real big boost to our community. So just wanted to share that in case anybody else was interested. We've received questions about it from the city of Aurora, the town of Johnstown, and then a town in Minnesota as well, who are all interested in using our kind of copying what we've done and implementing it in their community. So if anybody is interested, I'm happy to share how we did it. We had a vendor that essentially provided an app where the businesses could scan the certificates they received and automatically connect their bank account to a reimbursable account from the town. That way they could get reimbursed directly. So it was very low administrative burden as well. So if anybody's interested, please reach out to me and I'll make sure we get all that information to you.
Thanks, Ken. That's exciting. And we have a couple minutes if anybody had a question about that they want to ask Ken right now that might be beneficial for the group. My question is, where did that CARES Act money come from and how was it allocated?
That was the CARES Act money that came through Boulder County. So it was what we all received. And then I believe that allocation was based off population, if I'm remembering correctly. So I think for us here in Superior, we received maybe around $500,000 of the total that was provided to the county. And we used our allocation, not just on this program. This was actually a very small part of that. We did direct grants to our businesses. We did grants to anybody who wanted, any home-based businesses that wanted to join our Chamber of Commerce. And then we also did a grant to the Sister Carmen organization in Louisville to help provide kind of direct human services to our residents who might need it. So we tried to spread it around as equitably and effectively as possible.
Thanks for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
Adam, is that a new hand or is that a, okay, no worries. Any other share outs from communities that we may not know about and we may want to replicate and steal, beg, and borrow?
I'll just say Nederland is currently undergoing our Envision 2030 process. We had a document that was created from Envision 2020 that is now expired, obviously, and so we're embarking on that. It's a lot more kind of detailed and thorough than Envision 2020 was, so we're just building off of what we learned from the past, and it's on our town website, nederlandco.org. It's right there. The Envision is right on the side. So if anyone wanted to see kind of what our process looks like for that, we've just formed a 16-member committee that is going to be, taking the results of a community-wide survey that was done at the end of last year and distilling those into some actual actionable plans for the next decade. So if anyone was curious about what Nederland's up to, or I know a lot of folks are kind of part of the Nederland community. If you don't live there, we're a town that a lot of people come and visit. So we always welcome your feedback as well. Community survey is open to everyone.
Okay, cool.
That's great. Holly?
Our next light, which is our community-owned broadband, just got a grant. I'm not sure whether it's through the school system. It's through the CARES Act of $1 million or something like that. It was terrific. And so they're going to extend. They've already given out a whole lot of computers to kids who didn't have computers, who obviously really need them right now. And so they're going to use this money to extend giving out more computers, but also extending service that'll be not just one time, but it'll extend in perpetuity. So to people who are low income, which is a lot of people in our town. And so that'll be enormously helpful, because right now with COVID, a lot of people are saying, no, I don't have a computer. All these, the places that you're supposed to go, they always say, go to the website, blah, blah, blah. Well, but a lot of people can't go to the website because they don't have a computer. So this will help not just those kids, but their whole family in all kinds of ways. So it's a real boon to our community to be able to work with the school system to help them and also extend our broadband services to all the people in town who previously couldn't afford it. And so this is, it's terrific news. We're all very happy.
Great, thank you. Anybody else with an item to share out? Go ahead, Mark.
Thanks, Marta. I was just going to mention, since we have Jamestown and Ned and Lyons on the line, Marta mentioned this, there's a lot of work that's being done right now in preparation for the reconvening of the General Assembly to bring more dollars and more attention paid to the wildfire issue. Commissioner Jones and George Twigg, who was on the call earlier, or on meeting early in the evening when Sally was on, have been doing that work for us. So I'd be happy to have George reach out and connect with your communities and bring you into the fold to help support that work. We are going to need legislation passed, and we're going to need some advocacy at the Joint Budget Committee to bring more dollars to the issue. So we could certainly use some help from other communities across the county. So if you're okay, I'll reach out to the managers and we'll get you connected to that effort.
That would be fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, and for Jamestown, that'd be the manager would be Tara.
Thanks for sharing that, Mark.
Just a quick question along those lines, if you don't mind. Is there ever a representative from Allens Park or Raymond involved in these meetings? Because I feel like they're impacted a lot and we don't hear a lot from them.
Yeah.
Good question. So the consortium is membership is made up of all the incorporated cities and towns in the county. And so Allens Park is not an incorporated community, neither is Niwot, for example, and neither is Raymond or Riverside. Ward is, however, it's been a number of years since they've participated in the consortium. So I mean, I think if there are members and other or folks who live in the other mountain communities up in the county and they'd like to join consortium meetings, they're certainly welcome to do that, I would think. But that's the reason why there isn't formal representation for those communities.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Holly?
Maybe we could reach out to them. I've been thinking about that too. What used to come. But I also wanted to add to Eric that Representative Neguse, U.S. Congressman, has a wildfire committee. He's really doing a lot of work on that. So that's another resource to reach out to. And I just was in a meeting with. Oh, that was this meeting.
Yeah.
That's right.
That was here.
2 hours ago.
I'm,
Which is why we're going to
my
end
second
early,
meeting
Holly.
back. Sorry.
Yeah.
Great. So did anybody else have anything else they wanted to share out? And otherwise, I'm gonna gift you 5 minutes of your life to go do with as you wish. Thank you so much, everybody. I really appreciate the participation, and I'm excited about helping facilitate this group. And we will send you an email with kind of a summary of those pieces and those 5 topics and really specific guide of here's how we're going to do those topics and work together in our meeting time and breakout agenda with some ideas on time, etc. So thank you, and I'm looking forward to seeing y'all. Take care and be safe.
Okay.
Thanks again, Mark, for your help.
Thank you so much.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you all.
Nice seeing everybody.
Bye-bye.